You guys familiar a little bit with Sfas Emes? You ever heard of Sfas Emes? Lips of truth. Okay? What is Sfas Emes? Sfas Emes is a Hasidus. Right? I think for the previous Ger Rebbe's. Right? Sfas Emes was the only surviving grandson of the Chedush Arim. Chedush Arim, and if you look in the full Sfarim library, and you'll see the Chedush Arim takes up an armful of Sfarim. You think he's sitting at an electric typewriter or at a whatever it is. He has like a laptop computer or something like that, and he's riding in the lap of luxury. Truth is that Chedush Arim lost, I think, 13 children in his lifetime. I just had in Daf Yomi yesterday. Rabbi Yochanan, walked around with the bone of his I think 11th son, if I'm not 11th child that he lost. He lost 13 children in his lifetime. One lived long enough to have a child that was the Sfas Emes. So what's that? Who was the father of the Sfas Emes. So the Chedush Arim was the grandfather of the Sfas Emes. Sfas Emes, some say he wrote down all these pieces that we're going to read one in a second. He wrote down all of these pieces at the end of his life, and some say that he wrote them as he gave them each week. He wrote down and it's really just a capsulized. It's not something you can even read. It's not even full sentences. So it's sort of like a freeze-dried, like almost the notes to a lecture. So I always look for ones that at least I can understand, enough of the telegraphed, points to try to put like a little mosaic together. It's almost like a little bit of a poem with all sort of creative leaps and logical linkages. So let's take a look. We might need a little piece of help from the Chumash, as we proceed ahead, and we're going to do great, Bez Hashem. And we're going to start in this week's Parashat Ekev, Ekev Tishmu'un. And we've got so much. It's just like it's so many great psukim over here. It's unbelievable. It's like you learn through the pasuk, you learn through these psukim, and Sefer Devarim is called Devarim. I once heard from one of my rebbeim because the mimer that says Devarim hayotzim min alev nichnosim el alev. There's almost very little Rashi on the psukim because it's just it's Moshe Rabbeinu is talking straight talk to us. You can almost read Sefer Devarim and it's like you're just getting hammered with straight talk. You couldn't say it more straight. What's important, what's not important. This is what I want. This is what I beg from you. This is what I ask from you. You don't even need a parish just to sit and read the word themselves. But let's see what the Sfas Emes does with the pasuk. He says pasuk on the pasuk that says Ma Hashem l'kecha shoel imach. What does Hashem ask of you? Ki'im liyiras Hashem l'kecha. That's what the pasuk says. Ma Hashem l'kecha shoel imach. It's ask a question. What does Hashem ask of you? Of course, we know that Chazal tell us that David HaMelech, saw in this pasuk over here that there's an opportunity to take the word ma, to move it from a question into an interrogative statement into a declarative statement, right? By taking the word ma and inserting the letter aleph. The aleph always stands for Elokim. Inserting an aleph into the word ma. When you put an aleph into the middle of the mem and the hey of ma, you come up with a new word. And what's that new word? Mea. Mea Hashem l'kecha sholim. What does Hashem ask of you? Mea brachas b'chol yom. Right? So there's 100 blessings that we make every day. That's how we come to Yiras Shamayim. Is by peeling back the layers of creation. We're in the habit of saying them. But if you sort of read through the words very, very carefully and you sip them very carefully, we say Baruch, right? What does Baruch? Baruch atah, right? So if you look in the Art Scroll Siddur, it says, Blessed art thou, something like that. Okay, fine. The Nefesh HaChaim asks, are we actually blessing HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Actually, Gemara in Brachos. I think we're going to get to there in another day or two in the Daf Yomi. Is man blessing HaKadosh Baruch Hu? When I go to Eretz Yisrael, I say, God will be Yisrael. Rebbe, I don't care if he's 14 inches smaller than me. I bend my head down and said, Rebbe, can I have a bracha? On Friday night, my kids come over and they say, Abba, Barcheni Gamani Avi, bless me. Right? I don't put my head down, before my kids and say, to my grandchildren and say, bench me. I bench them. The gadol is mevarach the cotton. So what is the business that we do 100 times a day? We say Baruch Atah Hashem. It's a little bit strange, right? The Gemara learns, that Rabbi Shmuel benched the Kodesh Baruch Hu from the Kodesh Kedoshim. Okay, but meanwhile, So it's not so easy to understand. This not Nefesh HaChaim answers. He says that the word Baruch comes from the Hebrew word. If you take a look in the Yesod U'Malchus Sidurim, it has the word over there that the word Baruch means. Comes from the Hebrew word Brecha. Any Israelis over here? What's a Brecha? What?
Well, how's a pool?
The pool, but it also means like a live spring. What we're really saying also is Baruch Atah Hashem. Hashem is Atah Makor HaBracha. You are the source of bracha. Even though we look around the room and we see all kinds of different manifestations of electricity. You go into your house and you see, there's the toaster is working this way, the microwave is working, the computer's over here, a light is on in the room, there's a tape recorder, or something else, a musical thing is playing, the tape deck. It's all working by electricity. And they all look like they have some kind of independent, what do they have to do? One has to do with sound, one has to do with light, one has to do with heat. But then you go, you peek out the window and you see that there's a line that leads from your house that goes out to a transformer box, and you realize that it's all the same electricity, and it's one electricity bill that you pay at the end of the month, and then you go, aha, I got it now in here. It's all coming from the same source. So everything that we're asking for is all coming from one sublime source. It's really it's a fantastic, amazing notion. That it's all the same sublimated energy. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you something. It's totally fascinating, amazing. Anybody took high school chemistry, right? A little bit of high school chemistry. You know a little bit about there's neutrons and protons, and then there's electrons that are a little bit like the planets that are swimming around on the outside. I used to learn with a fellow who used to build nuclear power plants. That was light water power plants. That was his parnasa. I used to learn with the business people in Manhattan. Fascinating, amazing guy. And I used to pick his brain about certain facts. And he told me. I said, splitting the atom, or let's say, what's the stuff that the uranium, is it only uranium when you open it up? Out comes this, all this oceans of energy? He says, no. He says, you split open anything. He says, even the light comes from the sun from 93 million miles away at 186,000 miles a second that comes flying at us like from, I think, between 8.5 and 9 minutes away from the sun. He says that light is from the fusion of hydrogen. When hydrogen is pushed together under pressure, so the residual of that union is the light that comes flying off continuously from the sun. So that's the lightest stuff on the periodic table. That's the H. And then you go from the gas down to the liquid, down to the solid. The heavy stuff is the uranium. That's big enough. It's a big enough target that they can try to shoot it through, to break it open. And that's the stuff that's fissionable, that's splittable. But the truth is that even though when you look at the atomic, you look at the periodic table, you see that all of those different things, the difference between gold and ammonia and sodium and chloride and you name it, hydrogen and nitrogen, it's all the same stuff, right? It's just a question of how dense is the nucleus, and how many protons, how many neutrons, and how many electrons you have swirling at various valences. When you open up all of it or any of it, it's the same sublime energy which is inside. Isn't that unbelievable? That means everything that's in this room and everything that's between you and me and everything that we're perceiving with our mind, we're mostly C6H12O6, and there's oxygen between us, and there's a couple of metal objects. Everything that's here and everything that we are dealing with over here is all found on the periodic table, and it's all the same sublime energy which is sublimated into various densities and combinations. That's all. It's all the same stuff. There's no difference between the electrons of one and the electrons of the other. It's only energy that's being sublimated. Yeah, you got it? It's unbelievable. So you look at the periodic table and you realize it's all echad. It's all one. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. High school science, I didn't go much past high school science, but I was always interested in reading about science rather than becoming a scientist. But it's just amazing. It's just amazing just to consider that. So we close our eyes. That's one of the reasons why we close our eyes, because it's something that's easier to conceive of with our eyes closed, to understand that all the electricity, let's say in the room, is doing different functions, but it's really all one electricity bill. It's only one Rockland County O&R bill, right? Over here it's what, Edison. Con Edison. And inside every physical particle, it's all the same energy. It's all the same sublime investment that a Kodesh Baruch Hu put into that stuff. So we peel back the layers. We say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Hashem Atah Makor HaBracha, Hashem Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Elokeinu, our God, Melech HaOlam, who's King of the world. So every 100 times a day we peel back, we throw back the layers of the world, and we say, we found you, Hashem. We're not going to allow ourselves to be diluted by the layers of creation. So now we'll go back and see what the Sfas Emes has to say about this. Dirshu Chazal, the Chazal learn out the following thing: Hakol bidei shemayim chutz miyirah shemayim. Right? Because it says, right? What does the pasuk say? Ma Hashem lokecha sholim yimach. As if that's all that Hashem asks from you. Hashem's not asking anything else from you. Our job, our input is Yirah Shamayim. That's really our whole job over here. We don't have much else to do, right? That's what? Ki im liyirah Hashem lakecha. Ma Hashem lakecha sholim. That's our job. You want your job description? I show up in the job. I say, what's my job, boss? You say, your job is Yirah Hashem. That's all. Thank you. What? It's to serve Hashem. The yirah is to have yirah of Hashem. Fear. Now, yira doesn't mean like to be paralyzed with fear. It could be in the sense of awe. There's different types of yira that the Mesil Shisharim speaks about. There's yiras chait. Halavai, we should have that. Afraid to do the wrong thing. Okay. And there's also yiras haromamus, where the person, even if he's not doing something right now, but he realizes he's living with an awareness, with a hyper awareness that he's with a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem is here. Hashem is here. Sometimes we walk around with a certain absolute blindness. It's crazy, and we say, is Hashem really here? Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu imayin, like they said before Amalek came. Is Hashem really with us? No, I want to say like this. I wrote a poem on Purim, but I'm not going to read you the whole poem. I don't have it with me. But the basic premise of the poem is: can you imagine we walk around like this and we say, "Where's Hashem? Is Hashem really here? Do you really believe Hashem is here?" We can have even some scientist or something to say, no, I don't believe in Hashem. Okay, fine. You're allowed to say the words, and Hashem give you the free will to develop the attitude and the blindness. But now we open up our eyes someday. We realize that you look up at the blue sky. Now, my wife has blue eyes, and you realize that, and at some point you realize that what's happening is Hashem is really looking down. That blue sky is really the blue eye of Hashem. I mean, kaviyoko, ain't no goof, But can you imagine that it's even closer than that Hashem is looking down that's the blue of Hashem's eye. You're looking up at with the blue sky on a sunny day saying, do you really believe in Hashem? We're having a philosophical discussion. I said, do you really believe Hashem is there? And that blue eye is standing hovering right on top of you, like through a microscope, and it's looking at you. And then what happens is the sun sets and then it becomes dark. And you say, oh, it's black. Oh, I don't see the blue of the eye, because that's the pupil of the eye. Now Hashem is even closer. Now we'll be down even closer. Nothing is hidden from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's nothing that's hidden from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Truth is, it's not so easy to recognize it. Hashem designed it that way, that it shouldn't be easy, that we have to have intellect and to recognize it and to come to that hakara. I tell you something, one of the most unbelievable things I ever saw, Varta ever saw. This is something that's for every day. 2 times a day. We say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? Which I think we can appreciate, even just understand the periodic table. What we came to understand is Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad through the periodic table. That means everything in the world is really coming from Hashem. It's all the same stuff, so it's not so difficult to understand that. But listen what the Siach Yitzchak says, right? Or Yitzchak. The Siach Yitzchak is one of the, on one of the Siduri Hagra. I think it's one of the Talmidim of the Vilna Gaon. So he asks the question that it's not so easy to answer. I've asked scholarly audiences, and I get blank stares. Not that I'm used to speaking at scholarly audience, but I'm going to say, well, pepper, if I see that there's a couple of, and people sit there. No one knows the answer, or maybe they don't want to say the answer. But once you hear it, you say, oh, of course, that's the most obvious thing in the whole universe. And the question is, how come when we say in last week's parsha we had Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, And then we say one, and then immediately after, the next pasuk is, V'haftas Hashem l'kecha b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha. What's the connection between Hashem Echad and V'haftas Hashem l'kecha b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha? Doesn't seem to be. Like, this is one thing, this is one, Echad, and this is something else, suddenly. But it seemed like there's some kind of connection, because after you say Hashem Echad, you make the declaration Hashem is one, suddenly out comes like this fountain, this overflowing Niagara Falls of, oh, v'haftas Hashem Ekecha, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol me'odecha. How does this motivate that? How are they connected? You understand? It's a question. It's a big question. Got an answer? You got an answer? Boom, 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 boom. Dun, 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 dun. And this is what he says. We all have a feeling of love. Let's think about it. Someone's getting married, Mitzvah Hashem. Mitzvah Hashem, and you're going to start inviting people to the wedding. You're going to make up a list of people. Oh, I'll invite, Rebbe this one. Of course, my mother, my aunt. Oh, she was always so helpful. She always said nice things to me and encouraged me, And of course, the Shatran, all the people that we all benefited from, and all of our Rebbeim that we want to go back and tell them, you gave me those encouraging words. You stood by me. You believed in me. All these people, my mother, you helped, and you bought me this, and you bought me that, and all those people that we have a certain amount of love for. Now we all have, let's say, on a scale of 1 to 10, we have a certain amount of love for different people that are in the planet. From the mailman and the grocer, all the way up to Iman Abba, 6, 7, 8, Rebbe, this, Rebbe that one, 6, 7, 8, climbing up because this one helped me. These are the people that they're going to give a big hug to when they show up at my wedding or my son's bar mitzvah, whatever it is, right? You have that feeling of love, and then at one point it dawns on us, wow. All those people that are in my life, they all came from Hashem. They were all agents. They were all angels that were sent by Hashem. Right? Now, when I was a kid, we used to go out in the backyard with a magnifying glass. My kid asked me to borrow the magnifying glass. I said, just be careful, not on the porch. I don't want you to, And we used to burn leaves, right? And you could just, with a magnifying glass in the sun, you'd be able to just focus in, and you get like one of the little, right? You know what I'm talking about? You get like a little dot over there, and by just focusing the light of the sun, suddenly you started a fire. You can start a fire. So what happens is, if a person realizes that all of these people that I love, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 worth, now all of a sudden, I realize they were all sent by Hashem. All this goodness, all this pleasure, all this help, all this, wow. That all the separate love and disparate and distributed love that I have for everybody else is now focused and concentrated into the love that I have for Kadosh Baruch Hu. Then a fire goes out, goes up. And v'haftas Hashem l'kecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'odecha Hashem echad. Now, then. And it's an unbelievable thing, because it's not a stira. The love that we have for Kadosh Baruch Hu is not a contradiction, and is not detracted by the love that we have for other people. We have a mitzvah, v'hafta l'reacha kamocha, love Jews. And then we have another mitzvah, v'haftas Hashem l'kecha. Oh, how am I going to have love here, and how am I going to have love over there? It's not a contradiction. To the extent that you have love and appreciation for other Jews, that's the extent that it's going to be even more powerful and focused, the ability to come to love a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Just the opposite, as a matter of fact, to the extent that a person that lacks an appreciation for his fellow Jew and lacks an akaras hatov, he's going to have trouble benching a Kadosh Baruch Hu. I remember once heard from Rabbi Avigdor Miller, Zecher Tzadik Levracha. He said over, wow, a real Kanaker Vart. He said over. Even to say it like a vart, I don't like to say a vart. He said over that if a person sits down in an inimical way, if a person sits down at the bench, and he benches and he gets up and he walks away from the Suda, and he didn't thank his mother or his wife, or his sister or the cook or the chef or whoever it was that prepared the food, and he goes out, after benching, and he did the whole benching. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam. He went through the whole thing. He says, Al pi musar, not al pi din, not al pi halacha. You don't have to go back and repeat it again. Al pi musar, he says his benching is worthless. You hear that? Al pi musar. He says, because the way a person works, we go from the concrete to the abstract. That's the way the mind works. Could explain why in the Eser Dibros, Kavod Savicha Vesimecha is on the side of the Eser Dibros, Bein Odom Mamokum. Right? What's it doing over there? Parents are human beings. But to the extent that we can appreciate and we can understand that parents did so much and are doing so much and have cared so much and have given up their life and have given up their time and their blood and risked themselves, to provide and to care. To the extent that we can recognize that, that's the extent that we can now put and appreciate a Kadosh Baruch Hu. If a person is going to bypass his parents and go right to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, he's going to miss out on the tangible physical agents that delivered the good, and think that now he's going to suddenly jump up to an entity that's abstract from our thinking. That's a mistake. He says it's not happening. It can't happen that way. No. Thank you very much, though. Appreciate it. I'm working on something that someone told me at a Shalashudas a couple of years ago, and it really impacted me. That nowadays, when somebody offers you something, you offered a drink, and it's a seltzer, can I fill up? And the common phrase now that people say is, "I'm good." You hear that one? I'm good. And this rabbi, gave me like a shtick. He hit me with a bilkel on the head. He says that's different than saying no, thank you. When you say no, thank you, you're acknowledging that there's a giver, that somebody wants to give you something, and the answer is no, but thank you very much. When we say I'm good, and I find myself saying it all the time, I find myself saying it all the time, and catching myself, biting my tongue and saying, no, thank you, no, thank you. Because I'm good. It's only about me. I'm only involved with myself. I'm good. But what about saying, acknowledging the fact that somebody had a ratzon tov, had a desire to give something. So it's a habit, and it's a habit of feeling and a habit of attitude that I'm trying to expunge from my system. And now he goes on to explain the Sfas Emes, an unbelievable idea. Listen to this. Shelo kamidas basav adam, that a Kadosh Baruch Hu, when we find out that the job is hakol b'dei shemayim chutz me'yirah shemayim. By the way, everything we've been talking about right now is not a diversion or a distraction or aside to anything that we're talking about. This is really right on to the discussion over here, because it helps us and it reinforces us to do our only job, and our only job is Yirah Shemayim. And he says that the fact that the Kodesh Baruch Hu says Ma Hashem Lakecha Shalom Imach, what does Hashem ask from you? Ki im liyiras Hashem Lakecha, except that you should fear Hashem, and that's our only job. Hakol b'dei Shemayim chutz me'yirah Shemayim. Everything is from Him. Hashem is providing everything else. The only thing that we have to bring to the party, what can I bring? What can I bring? I'll just bring Yirah Shemayim. Oh, okay, that's all I want. That's all you want me to bring to the party?
Whatever happens to you, it's all from God.
What's that?
What happens to you through the life, it's all happening from God.
What happened? Yeah, whatever happened, whatever is coming, Hashem is taking care of 99.999% of everything else, and the only thing that you have to do is Yirah Shemayim. That's it.
So whatever happening 3 or 4 years in your life, that's all has to happen.
That's all part of the wrapping that a Kodesh Baruch Hu gives, and our only job is to recognize that Me'ez Hashem Haisazos, that this is coming from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Now, could it be that part of our Hishtadlus is Yirah Shemayim also? Putting on tefillin is Yirah Shemayim. Showing gratitude is Yirah Shemayim. Could be even going to work is Yirah Shemayim also. I'm not saying, we're not saying how to behave or how not to behave, but we're not sitting around saying be passive and let things happen to you, and then say, well, Hashem did this and Hashem did that. Part of it is to recognize and to adjust. Tov v'yosher Hashem, al ken yorach hatayim b'derech. Hashem is good and kind, and therefore He's teaching us things along the way, how to adjust. That this is coming from a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Let's learn the lesson. Let's find out what's happening. What's a Kodesh Baruch Hu trying to get us to know? Now He's telling us that based upon that, we see a comparison that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is not like a melech basav adam, because what happens is that a melech basav adam. Shirashi's who lehetel yira al am. He says the average king. You take a Saddam Hussein, Yamach Shimon, when he's busy putting his statue up all over the place and making sure I'm watching you. I'm watching you. I got my people out there, my secret service. What's that?
Soldiers.
I got my soldiers. I get ears all over the place, and we're watching you. And I got my statues, and I got pictures in every room. And my job is to instill my yira into you, and then I'm going to tax the life out of you, and your job is to provide me with parnasa and to enrich me. The average king is doing just the opposite. The average government statist is also doing the same thing. He's enriching himself through the people and putting yira and trying to strike fear in their hearts so that they'll be obedient. The Kodesh Baruch Hu is doing just the opposite. He's feeding us. It's a food world. Kodesh Baruch Hu is taking care of all of our digestion. Kodesh Baruch Hu is pumping beautiful and delicious food into the world. You walk around even in Brooklyn, the concrete jungle over here, but every time you turn around the corner, there's another fruit and vegetable stand. Isn't that unbelievable? There's another little Gucci Frito stand. There's another grocery store. There's a pomegranate over here. There's a this, there's that. It's unbelievable how much food there is. It's a food universe. And when it's raining, and there's food that's growing out, and there's trees, and there's it's unbelievable, with colors and varieties, and without end. What do you want? What kind of salad do you want over here? You want mushrooms? Do you want you want beets? You want borscht? What do you want? What do you want? You want lemons? You want to taste a lemon? You want sweet? You want strawberries? You want cherries? What do you want? What do you want? You want plums? You want a slice of bread? You want whole wheat bread? You want pita? You want hummus? What do you want? What flavor do you want? You want peppers? Come on! You want something sweet? It's unbelievable. You want an orange? You want to drink some orange? It's unbelievable. Just the sheer variety and the flavors that a Kodesh Baruch Hu, the smorgasbord of things that a Kodesh Baruch Hu put out. He's feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding. And says, but it's your job to come up with your shemayim on your own. I'm not going to squeeze that out of you. Hakol bidei shemayim. Everything is coming from heaven. I'm going to provide everything for you. I'm going to give to you. I'm going to give. And that's how Avraham Avinu used to take care of his guests also, by the way. Avraham Avinu. That's how he taught. He learned. Avraham Avinu learned from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He recognized that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Tachlas HaTov L'Heitiv. Hashem is good. That's what he recognized. And he says that everything in this world, he looked around, has a plan and a purpose. How come everything has a plan and a purpose? Like every button on this, on this recorder over here has some kind of a meaning to it. And even if it has a little jot or a diddle, it has like a thing that, it's a lever, that locks it. That shows me, that's where the microphone, that's what MIC stands for. Everything means something. He looked at the world and he said, wow, take a look at every part of this tree does something interesting. It does something very important for the support of the tree. There's the xylem and phylum. There's the roots that brings the water up from the trees, even if the water drains from the earth, and the earth is acting as a filtration system, and then that water is being converted as it rises up through the trees against the force, against gravity through the process of capillary action, and after a few months it starts to push out of the edges of the trees, and it becomes a sweet fruit on the other side, and it produces now a fan, an umbrella for shade, and while you're sitting there eating the fruit under the tree, it's providing an umbrella, a shade for you. Isn't that something, right? And it's also holding onto the soil of the earth so it doesn't get washed away when it rains. It's doing so many functions, and one leaf doesn't sit on top of another leaf, and that's how it ends up providing this umbrella of shade. Because no leaf, even the ones that are growing on top, wouldn't dare go on top of a leaf, because the next branches that are growing up higher, as the tree goes higher, will go into a different angle, and then it creates a step and a stairway that you can climb up actually into the tree and pick the fruit. Isn't that something, right? So, it's unbelievable. So Avraham Avinu noticed this plan and purpose in every little part of creation, and he says, if there's plan and part in every part of creation, he says, then what's the plan and purpose of me being aware of it and being conscious and understanding this? And eventually came to understand. He says, I must have the job, he says, to emulate it. And so what did he do? So Chazal tell us that he used to bring people into the tent and he would feed them, right? And he'd feed them and feed them and feed them, and he'd tell them, now it's time to thank the one you gave you all this food. And they say, well, thank you, Abraham. He says, don't thank me. He says, I'm just a waiter in this restaurant. He says, who do we thank? And then he would tell people that there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. He convinced them, and he would explain to them with logic that there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Even after a person becomes convinced with logic, he still has to work hard to hold that idea in his mind. Because the minute you turn your eyes away from the page, the minute you get up and walk away from the lecture, the mind goes blank again. The minute you're going to walk out of here, you're going to forget about everything I said. I promise you. You'll remember it. It'll stir around inside. It's up to the person himself. Imeina nili mili, if I'm not for myself, to take it and to do something with it. Esav knew this stuff. Esav knew everything. Esav was a genius. Isn't that unbelievable? Esav. He just didn't, he never, v'yadata hayom, v'hashivosa elav he never got it into his heart. Esav knew everything. He got 100 on his Torah regents. He got 100 on all of his exams. 100%. We think Esav was a dummy? Esav was no dummy. That's why his head was buried in Maris Machpelah. But his heart was not interested in it. Right? In spite of the fact that he had the best rebbes, you can't blame look at the environment that he grew up in, Esav. Look at that. You realize, Imena Nili Mili. Take a look at what we had for Chavrusa. He gets set up with Yaakov. Okay, Yaakov and Esav, you guys sit and learn together. Okay, great. Can you imagine having Yaakov Avinu for Chavrusa? Not too shabby. And who was his father? He came from a father. His father was Yitzchak Avinu. Ein avos ela shlosha. Look who Zaidi was until the age of 13, till the bar mitzvah, till he came to the bar mitzvah, was Avraham Avinu, right? And he had a mother Rivka. We're talking about 3 out of the 7 people that they're mentioning and benching on Friday. Well, not what I'm mentioning the mothers. Yisim Ekalihim Kasar Rivka Rachav Aleah. But the avos hakadoshim. Wow, the avos. He was surrounded by the avos. And he had a Babi Sarah he never got to meet. And he's supposed to be marrying Leah. Okay, but that didn't work out. Okay, But look at who had her. That even still, and he knew it in his head. He just couldn't get it in his heart. Kol b'dei Shemayim chutz the Yireh Shamayim. He never brought the Yireh Shamayim. He had the intellect, the information he had, but he never did anything with it. So that's what the Sfas Sefer says. Aval melech midas melech malchei amlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu hakol biyado. Everything is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'nosan habechira biyada adam, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it into the hand of man. That's our bechira. This is probably the most fundamental exercise of our bechira, of our free will. He says, Shechein Sarak Lios Shipul Ma'atzma, Sheyipul Ma'atzma, that the person, Mora Hamakam, the person has to bring it out of himself. He's got to wake it up himself, this Moras Hamakam, the way Avram Avinu did. He says, Al B'nei Odom, that the person has to bring it out. Kadosh Baruch Hu left it up to the man. That's what you bring to the table. That's what you bring to the world, is Yireh Shamayim, is this awareness that there's a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Now, if you take a look at it, the whole autonomic nervous system, 99% of the things that are happening inside of our body are happening without my having to do anything about it, right? Swallowing, blinking, the heartbeat, the digestion. You just eat something and then you go to sleep and you wake up, you take a Mylanta, whatever like that, because you had too much pizza, it was too greasy, it was too, it's all happening. It's all happening, and the beard grows, and the person gets mature, and he gets older, and all these different things are happening, all the functionings, and it's all, we're totally blind to it, and totally, some people may never notice it once in their entire life to realize that a Kodesh Baruch Hu has been giving us all these things all of our lives. It's unbelievable. Hakol b'dei Shemayim chutz mi Yireh Shamayim. Just the ability to say, and that's what Yireh Shamayim doesn't mean only to be frightened by a Kodesh Baruch Hu. It means to recognize and to be thankful to a Kodesh Baruch Hu.
Recognize he exists.
What's that?
To recognize that he exists.
To recognize and to appreciate that Hashem exists. But I'm going to tell you something else now. I wish I had the piece with me with the Svasem, from the Baal Shem Tov, from Me'or Naim. It says something else in this week's parsha, because we said before there's 2 things, Ahav and Yira. Why does a Jew shuckle? Why do Jews shuckle? You ever notice Jews do something different than everybody else? We go like this, right? I once heard such a beautiful shein of art like this. The Zohar says the reason why Jews shuckle, only Jews and crazy people shuckle, right? You ever see crazy people also shuckle? I don't know, for some, and because there's like the Ner L'kim Nishmas Adam, the soul of man is like the candle of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and a candle, the flame wants to go up. It wants to go back to the sun, the Zohar says. It wants to go back, even though it knows when it gets swallowed up in the sun, you're going to take that candle, you're going to put it in the sun, it's going to become batul and mavutul. It's going to become nothing in comparison to the size, the enormity of the sun. Yeah, it's going to get swallowed up and become. But the candle still wants to go back to it. Everything wants to go back to its source. The neshama, when it gets a little bit inspired, it's hard to not shuckle. It's hard. It's because the neshama is starting to. It shows that there's a stimulation to the neshama. But someone once explained a very beautiful idea that a Jew moves like this back and forth because there's ahava and there's yira. Ahava means I want to come close. Avinu, Malkeinu. Avinu, Malkeinu. Right? Hashem echad, and then you want to run like a moth into the fire. V'ahavtas Hashem l'kecha. But the moth, don't get too close to the fire because it gets hot. I always wonder why moth. I have to study that, figure out why moth wants to run into the fire, why they go to the light. There's part of us that wants it, and then the part of it realizes, it's dangerous. Don't get too close because you might get burnt. So what is Yireh Shamayim? So just like we said before, when a person closes his eyes, he says, V'ahavtas Hashem l'kecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'odecha, and he realizes that all the good things and all the goodies and all the sweets and all the help that he got in his life is all coming from Hashem. V'ahavtas Hashem l'kecha b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'odecha. Now we'll work the other way also. Take a look at this. Wow. In the pasuk says this week's parsha, that when you're going to come into the land and you're going to start to get involved with conquering the army and the land that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm giving you this land, but you got to overcome a big hurdle. And what's that humongous hurdle? Is that there's people in the land. Now don't forget, 40 years earlier, the Miraglian came back with this, gigantic fruit, that was the size of, who knows what, like a room over here, and they carried it, and they said, you think the fruit is big? You should see the people. Oh man, it's humongous over there. This place is like, and these people are like, it's crazy. They're huge. And not only that, now we find out that they're numerically more than us also. It says, Hashem is going to give you their armies and you're going to conquer them. He says, don't be merciful to them. Don't worship their gods. Because that's a trap to you. Now it says like this, but there's another thing. When you're going to say in your heart, they're bigger, they're more than us. What are we going to do? How are we going to inherit them? We're small little tiny people over here. We're 6 million people surrounded by 14 million, surrounded by 1.5 billion hostile Arabs. What are we going to do? So the pasuk says, "Lo sira mehem," don't be afraid of them. Why? Zakar tizkor asher asa Hashem l'kecha b'Pharaoh u'l'chol Mitzrayim. Remember what Hashem, God, did when He took you out of Mitzrayim. Listen to this unbelievable thing over here. Rabbeinu Yonah counts Lo sira, don't be afraid, as one of the 613 mitzvahs. Did you know that? I remember a few times I went to see a great person in Muncie. His name was Reb Mordechai Schwab, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. And he asked Rabbi Wallerstein about him. Rabbi Wallerstein had a chance, or learned with him when he was in the Beis Shraga in Muncie, when he was a young fellow, a bacher. And Reb Mordechai Schwab was called the Tzaddik of Muncie. I went to him a few times with he opened up the Chumash to this pasuk, also a pasuk in Kisavo that says, Lo sira mehem, don't be afraid of them. Rabbeinu Yonah brings both of these two psukim. He says it's a lav in the Torah. Don't be afraid. Not allowed to be afraid. Don't be afraid. He said it in such a soothing way that after we walked out, don't be afraid, don't worry about it. So we didn't, you feel, it's foolish of me to be afraid because, the Torah says don't be afraid, But I wondered about this. It bothered me because for the rest of my life, I know that any time you tell somebody don't, and especially when it comes to be an emotional thing, right? Something that's emotional, you have just the opposite effect. Like you tell a kid that's being picked on in school, don't let them bother you, right? Don't worry. Tell somebody, don't worry, and they're worried. So what happens when you tell somebody, don't worry? Or you go to confront somebody, you're not supposed to confront somebody when they're mad. And say, what are you so upset about? Calm down, right? The more you try to bekoshi, the more you try with force to suppress it, right? What happens? It's like pushing a beach ball to the bottom of the pool, The more you're going to try to sit on it and weigh it down, the more anxious it is to surface, and with the greater ferocity, it's going to it's going to jump out when you try to push it down with too much force. You have to find a way to deflate it. You have to find a way to deflect it. But don't tell me don't be afraid. I'm afraid, Abba. I can't tell my kid when there's lightning and there's thunder outside. Don't be afraid. I'm afraid. He's under the covers. He comes running into my bed. The girls come screaming into the room. We're afraid. They heard lightning and thunder. Well, the Chazal tell us that lightning and thunder was put into the world to straighten out a man's heart. That's what it's here for. It has its purpose. It doesn't say over there, don't be afraid. So how come the Chumash come and say, come along and tell us, don't be afraid? And the answer is, you can hear something unbelievable. It's not my answer, but I discovered it with the help of a piece I saw in the Me'or Einayim, which is from the previous from Square, going all the way back to the Chernobyl Rebbe, Reb Nachum from Chernobyl. And he brings down a piece from the Baal Shem Tov. He says, this is what's written from the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov said, I don't have it in front of me right now. I wish I had it with me. Maybe I'm lucky enough it's in one of these pieces of paper. I don't see it over here. Okay. The Baal Shem Tov says the following thing. He says that all the pachadim, all the frights and frightening things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu puts into the world, he says he only puts them there, right? He's quoting also another pasuk in Mishnah. He says, "Ashrei ish mefached tamid." Happy is the person, or successful the person who's always afraid. That sounds like a contradiction. Always afraid? How can he be happy all the time? So he says the explanation is, he says HaKadosh Baruch Hu put pachadim in the world, different frightening things in the world, lions and tigers and bears. Oh no, all kinds of different things. and scary stuff in the world. He says, and why did Kadosh Baruch Hu put it in the world? He says, not to punish the person. He says, but to remind the individual, he says, that this thing is really coming, that this is coming from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And he says, and if somebody realizes that a Kadosh Baruch Hu is sending this scary thing in order to remind him to be afraid of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, to rethink about a Kadosh Baruch Hu, he says, then he says like an if-then without any qualification, then you won't be damaged by that thing. You know, you will not be damaged by that thing. Actually, the same thing is written. The exact flip side. And the exact same formula is offered by the Nefesh HaChaim. This is the Litvisha version. The student of the Vilna Gaon writes that if a person, in truth, he says, if a person wants to not get damaged by something, he should think, Eino Dovado, there's nothing other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu, which really is the same concept. If I look on a screen, sometimes a person's watching a movie and a dog's and they're coming at you, ooh, and you get scared. You go, it's only a movie. Oh, what am I talking about? And you realize that it's only a movie, you know. But a person who doesn't realize it, who's watching one of these IMAXs, you know, might get a heart attack, you know, thinking like, you know, oh, we're about to going to pass out because it looks so frightening. Don't pass out. It was put there in order to give you Yiras Hashem, that you should have Yiras Hashem. That's why we put there. That's why there's barking dogs were put there. That's why this frightening situation came upon you. He says, in order to teach you Yiras Hashem, because there's nothing that's not happening in the world that doesn't come directly from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's nothing. I'm tempted to tell a story that I don't understand. I'm going to tell you a story I don't understand, and I'm going to tell you what to finish up what the Baal Shem Tov says. I'm walking down. I wake one morning. I'm learning Chovos Levavos with one of my rebbeim early in the morning. And while we're learning outside from Or Sameach, early in the morning, he says to me. He says like this. He said he quotes the Chovos Levavos says in a few different places, but in this particular one place he said that Shar B'Tochen, he says that a person has to get into their system the following idea, that nobody can hurt you and nobody can help you unless it comes directly from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Same thing, Einod Mavada. There's nothing other than a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Nobody can help you. There's no independent force in the world. What is idolatry? Idolatry is, I think, that there's some force, that's something that Hashem didn't have control over. That's idolatry. You know, I'm now going to try to slice between, get away from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and I say, oh, this force, electricity or fire or water or politics or money has nothing to do with Hashem. That's not true. Everything, like we said, everything in the physical world is coming from Hashem. It's all one. So what are you talking about? He says a person has to get it clear in his brain, crystal clear, that nobody can help you and nobody can hurt you unless it comes directly from Hashem. And then remember the Rebbe said, Shenemar, as it says, Shema Yisrael Hashem Lokeinu Hashem Echad. And it became, at that moment in the morning, sometimes the morning can be, you can be half asleep and groggy. But that morning, maybe it was the strength of the coffee or something, but it crystallized in my brain, and I said, wow, I got it. Sometimes just the way the Rebbe said it, or the time in the morning, and it locked in, I said, I got it. I came home after davening and some other learning we did, and before going out into the day, my wife was going off to work, whatever, and she said, what you learned this morning? What you learned? I said, okay, I'll tell you one thing I heard. Nothing can help you, nothing can hurt you unless it comes directly from Hashem. So my wife, his parents went to the Holocaust, so right away she starts asking questions. What about tzaddik v'ralo? There's a tzaddik and bad happening. What about Rasha v'tovlo? And some philosophical questions. I said, yeah. And she had counter questions. We had gotten to a little bit of a discussion. My mind was fuzzy already. I'm ready to step into the day. I didn't have good answers, and I didn't feel clear anymore, and it was hard for me to give the right answers. And so we had this discussion, and that's how it ended. Meanwhile, I went out to my day, and I'm learning with business people. There's a lawyer I used to learn with at 162nd Street in the Grand Concourse. You know where Grand Concourse on 162nd Street? You guys are in Brooklyn, okay? So you don't know. 161st Street in Grand Concourse is the address for Yankel Stadium, okay? Okay? So when you go to Yankee Stadium, you go up to Grand Concourse. On the top of the street, past the Yankee Stadium, there's a courthouse up there. I'm not asking if anybody, a criminal courthouse. And this guy has an office about 5 or 6 blocks away from the criminal courthouse. So it's very hard to find a parking place over there because there's always double parking near the courthouse and even a block away from the courthouse. So I never go near the courthouse. So I went, 2 blocks away and 3 blocks away, and I went around the block. Now there's double parking and triple parking 3 and 4 blocks away from the courthouse. Must have been a busy day. So now I plan to get there at a certain time, and I don't like to be late. I'm leaving late. Oh, tonight I was late, and I was doing hakafas, and I was going around the block, and every time I went around the block, I was eating up time, and I said, now I'm late. Now I'm really nervous. I want to get there in time, and we only have an hour to learn, and and I'm already late. Didn't have cell phones, no one to call. They couldn't call them. So finally, I go 5-6 blocks away from the courthouse, and when you get 5 or 6 blocks away, it starts to look like like Lebanon during the bombed out neighborhood during the war over there, just like you see buildings where one building after the other is geschmettered, is destroyed, just a pile of bricks. So I pull into this block, a little bit of a hill over there, and I pull into the middle of the block. There's one other car, if you can still call it a car. It looks like the Thanksgiving turkey, like 6 days later, after it's been carved into pieces. It's up on the milk crates, and there's just like a hull of a car that's over there, a hull of a car. And so I said, listen, I got a junky old car. I'll park my car over here. Big schneal, Worst that happens is I lose my car, but listen, we all take risks in life. So I parked my car in the middle of the block, and I'm telling you, every building was totally destroyed. On the bottom of the corner of that corner, there was also a little Gucci Frito store. One of those little Spanish what do they call? Bodegos. So I'm going down towards the corner, and I get about halfway distance between my car and the corner, and I'm carrying a big. My big chassan shas with me. I'm taking the Gemara to go learn with this guy. And as I'm getting down to the corner, suddenly 3 Puerto Rican guys come around the corner, like at a West Side Story. Now, the last thing you want in New York is, where people are very impersonal, often, and for good reason. You don't want anybody seeing you, seeing them, seeing you, seeing them. And what happened was we locked eyes for a second, and I felt like, like they're looking at me like, flesh, like a steak, they're already, and I hear them, and they got quiet for a second, and I said, I said, something, maybe I'll just walk casually back to the car and lock myself in until they pass by, like these look like 3, hot guys over there, so, and I said, but I'm already too close to the corner, too far away from the car, they'll smell that I'm trying to avoid them, and they'll think that it'll be an invitation rather than, right, you know what I'm saying? They'll smell fear, they know. I said, maybe I'll just sort of casually walk across to the other side of the street. I said, they'll smell that too. I said, it's too late, I can't go across the street, I can't go back to the car, and it seems like I'm locked into their sights. I said, there's nothing for me to do. Then I remind myself, nobody can help you, and nobody can hurt you. I just learned this morning, unless it comes directly from Hashem. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And I started like, wow, I understand it now.
Nobody can hurt you.
And nobody can help you, and nobody can hurt you, unless it comes directly from Hashem.
Wow.
So I'm walking now with this idea down the street, and suddenly I think, Gam ki elach begates amavis, lo yirara ki ata imadi. I'm starting now singing in my mind, Shalashudas over there, and I'm feeling it, I'm understanding it. I'm in this little bubble that I was never in such a beautiful, protective place in my life. Ein od milvado, efes u'asod, there's nothing other than the Kodesh Baruch Hu. I said, if they want to kill me, it's because the Kodesh Baruch Hu wanted me, not because they can do anything to me. Nobody can do anything to me. I said, maybe it'll even be a good thing. They'll put a knife through the Gemara, I'll be there, they'll name a street after me, I'll be like Rabbi Akiva, My wife will cry, and the kids will say, oh yeah, but they'll say, he, going to learn, he went, and I started even fantasizing a little bit about it. My mind flashed over there. I said, I wasn't scared, nothing. I said, this is great. I almost never in such a beautiful, frame of mind. It was I understood it, the pressure and yet I just learned what I needed to learn that morning. And I was walking, and I could hear them almost like distant dogs barking. And they go, and as they were approaching me, and I was just walking to them in this little bubble of chen, and dveikus to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So as we're passing each other, an amazing thing happened. This is what I didn't understand. I could now begin to pick up their Spanglish, their English, Spanish, blended, language over there. As they were passing by, who's going to move over on the sidewalk for whom? Are they going to move over for me? They split and they passed by and they continued their conversation. And I heard one line of one guy saying to the other, man, if God don't want something to happen to you, man, it's not going to happen. Man, if God don't want something to happen to you, it's not going to happen. That's what they were saying to each other. Man, if God don't want something to happen to you, it's not going to happen. They were having that discussion. And after they passed by, I stood there with my Gemara, I turned around, and I watched them sort of walk into the distance having this discussion. I was thinking to myself, were they thinking that because I was thinking that? Or was I thinking that because they were thinking that? Man, if God don't want something to happen to you, it's not going to happen. I came home and I told my wife, I said, you want to hear what happened to me just this afternoon? She goes, that's unbelievable. She goes, those 3 Puerto Ricans, they understood it. And we didn't understand it this morning, I'm embarrassed, But this is what the Baal Shem Tov says. He says, don't be afraid of them. He says, don't be afraid, because the whole reason why Hashem put the fright in the world is to teach you to have yiras Hashem. That's why Hashem put the fright in the world. Not that you should be punished. He says, and if a person doesn't think about it, he says, then he's at risk that thing that's frightening him could actually get teeth and could bite him and could hurt him. That dog. Now, we live in an age where we've gone through a lot of isms. We've gone through materialism and communism and socialism, and a lot of these things still exist, But the ism nowadays, the real ism that the world suffers from is terrorism. And that's what it says in the pasuk over here. Now we go back to the pasuk. It doesn't say don't be afraid, right? What does the pasuk say? It says lo sira mehem. It says don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of them, but be afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? So there's one thing that says when you consider all the tov and all the good that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives, so it's not independent from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We take it, we combine it, we mix it, we say, oh, that comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Meis Hashem ha'izazos v'haftas Hashem l'kecha b'chol avavcha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'odecha. But when it comes to yiras Hashem, Hashem put frightening things into the world and put things that we're scared of. You get onto a plane, my daughter says, and some guy came on and someone was on a bus and they remember seeing some guy walk near the bus. They all got all scared because who's this guy coming to the bus in Israel? People are afraid. You hear about this, you hear about that. What could happen? Rahman al-Islam. What could be going on? A guy's walking down the street. Oh my gosh, what's going on? You're Shemaim. You're getting onto a plane. My daughter says, well, I'm afraid to get on a plane. And there was lightning, and the plane started dancing up and down. And says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of that. Be afraid of him. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of anything else. So yira is the way that we stay away from doing the wrong thing. Ahava is the feeling that we want to come close. And that's why the Jew shuckles. Avinu, want to come close. Malkeinu. Lo yira mehem. Don't be afraid of them, but be afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So all the fears that we take, we bring into one rich, concentrated notion also, and we close our eyes and we say, and we say to have yiras Hashem. Ma Hashem lokecha sholem imach. What does Hashem ask from you? Ki im li yiras Hashem lokecha. That is our only job. We realize all the different frights in the world. They're not independent frights that we have in the world. Those are things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave, that when we put them together, we realize these are all coming from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that is one way that we can grab onto, we can conceive in our minds and actually come to the state of Yir Shamayim, the same way we come to Ahavas Hashem, by realizing and combining and focusing all the good. We realize all the frightening and dangerous things and vulnerabilities that we have in our lives. We say, don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of illness. Don't be afraid of Arabs. Don't be afraid of war. Don't be afraid of death. Don't be afraid of speeding cars. Don't be afraid of a policeman. Don't be afraid of anything. Be afraid of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Oh, and then those things don't have the power to hurt us because we realize we got the lesson that was meant to be embedded into Kol Bidei Shemayim. Everything comes from heaven. Chutz Mir Shemayim. Okay, let me press the pause button over here.